They told me to water the plants and double lock the doors, like I was some dependable housekeeper they could trust, but not invite. "You're too old for long flights, Grandma. Just watch the house." That's what they said before pulling away in their shiny charcoal van, laughing about turquoise waters and fresh seafood. They didn't see my face as they left. I didn't say a word, just waved. The next morning, I found their travel documents in my mailbox, still sealed in the agency's envelope, unstamped. I stared at them for a full minute, like they were meant for someone else. Departure in 4 days. Destination, Carinos. 2 adults, 2 children. Seats grouped together. My name wasn't on any of it. Of course it wasn't. I brought the tickets inside, laid them on the kitchen table, and made a cup of tea. That's what you do at my age when something strikes you in the chest like a cold wind. You brew tea and wait for your hands to stop trembling. But they didn't. They shook as I reached for my old address book and searched for the number to the agency. "I'd like to cancel these tickets," I said. The girl on the line sounded startled. "May I ask why, ma'am?" "No," I replied. "Just cancel them." There was a brief pause, then a cautious, "of course." I jotted down the confirmation number, then made another cup of tea. I settled into the armchair where I once rocked my son to sleep and stared across the room. The photo of my late husband, Raymond, still sat on the mantel, young, full of life, smiling. He'd been gone for over 22 years. If he were still here, this never would have happened. I'd played many roles in this house: wife, nurse, receptionist, cook, mender of broken toys and broken hearts. And for the last 11 years, just Grandma. Not Vera. Not Mom. Just a silent fixture in the background. Obedient. Overlooked. They expected me to stay behind and wait for cheerful updates. Snapshots of blue skies. Casual messages like, "Wish you were here," though they never truly intended to bring me. I glanced at the canceled tickets again. Then I opened the drawer where I kept my passport. Still valid. I had just under 15,000 krats in savings and a few more tucked away in certificates. No debts. No obligations. No one who truly needed me. Not anymore. I booked a flight. Carinos. 1 seat. Aisle. Next, I rang my neighbor, Donna, and asked if she'd mind watering the plants. "Of course, sweetheart." "Taking a trip?" she asked. "Just a small one," I said. I packed a modest suitcase, comfortable shoes, my best silk scarf, and the navy blue dress I hadn't worn since Raymond's memorial. Not because of grief, but because it made me look sharp, and I'd forgotten how it felt to look that way. That night, I sat on the porch. The neighborhood was hushed. A breeze nudged the ivy along the fence. I wondered what they'd say once they realized. Maybe they'd call. Maybe not. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't staying behind. Morning arrived gently. I locked the door, left a note for Donna, and walked down the steps, slow but steady. I didn't look back. At the airport, the gate agent skimmed my passport, then looked up and gave me that polite, practiced smile people use when they see someone older traveling alone. "Enjoy your flight, ma'am." I didn't answer, just kept walking. One hand gripped my suitcase handle, the other held my boarding pass like a lifeline. I hadn't flown in nearly 3 decades. The airport buzzed with sound and silver reflections, all glass and motion, families rushing, announcements echoing, travelers carrying tangled lives. But I moved through it like I belonged. Because that's half the trick, acting like you do. A lesson learned when you've been quietly invisible for too long. On the plane, I took my aisle seat and sat still while passengers shuffled around me. The seat beside me stayed empty until the final boarding call. A man in his mid-30s, wedding ring glinting, eyes thoughtful, dropped into it with a tired sigh. "Long trip?" he asked as we began taxiing. "Long enough," I replied. He smiled, then respected the silence between us. I appreciated that. I slept through most of the flight. Not deeply, just enough to keep sorrow from hardening into bitterness. When I woke, we were gliding above the Aegean. An endless stretch of blue. That was the moment I knew I'd truly done it. I wasn't here to take selfies or hunt for souvenirs. I was here because they told me not to come. At the airport in Carinos, I moved more slowly. The heat pressed differently there, even inside. I caught a taxi to a modest pension tucked away on a quiet lane. Nothing luxurious, just clean calm. The woman at the front desk spoke English and called me madam, like it still meant something. Inside the room, I placed my suitcase against the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry, just stared at the tiled floor for a long while. Grief doesn't always come in tears. Sometimes it's the weight of every holiday and birthday you smiled through, knowing you were merely tolerated. That evening, I wandered a few streets nearby, found a small bakery, ordered bread and marinated olives. The waiter didn't rush me. He smiled gently and let me be. I ate slowly, without checking my phone once. No one was waiting for an update from me anyway. The next morning, I woke early. The light in this place was different, gentler somehow. I opened the shutters and let it spill in. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on lipstick. Just a touch. The same deep rose shade I used to wear before everything in life became beige and apologetic. At the front desk, I asked for recommendations, not tourist traps. Some were quiet, I said. The young woman behind the counter scribbled something on a notepad. Try 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅, she said. It's old, peaceful. So I went. Whitewashed homes hugged narrow stone paths. Alleyways curved like whispers. Cats dozed in sunny doorways. Flowers overflowed from chipped clay pots. Everything felt suspended in time, unhurried, quietly beautiful. I walked until my feet throbbed. Then I sat on a weathered bench and simply was, while sun-happy couples passed by, laughing too loudly, holding hands. No one stared at me. No one called me old. No one told me to just watch the house. I thought of my granddaughter, 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅, 16, always sending me photos with filters and her tongue out like it was some secret language. I wondered what she'd say if she saw me here. Probably laugh. Maybe roll her eyes. I reached into my bag and pulled out a postcard I'd bought earlier. I hadn't planned to write, but my fingers moved on their own. Dear 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅, guess where I am? 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. The sea is bluer than you'd believe. I hope you're well. Love, Grandma. I didn't write to my son or his wife. They didn't need to know. The postbox was near a cafe. I dropped in the card, then ordered a coffee and sipped it slowly, the way my mother used to in the quiet hours of morning, before life became all lists and expectations. That evening, back in my room, I noticed I was humming an old tune. One Raymond used to sing while shaving. I hadn't thought of it in years. I wasn't young. I wasn't fearless. But I was finally in a place I chose. That counted for something. I didn't set out to meet anyone. That wasn't the point. But life has its own timing and rarely asks permission before rearranging yours. It happened 2 mornings later at breakfast. I was at my usual table near the window, carefully buttering toast. Across from me, at a nearby table, sat a woman around my age. Her silver hair was swept up into a no-nonsense bun. Sharp eyes peeked out from under crescent-shaped glasses, perched low on her nose. You used too much butter, she said, not unkindly. I looked up amused. Better than too little. She nodded. Fair. That was the beginning. Her name was Celia, a retired headmistress from Marburg, traveling alone like me. Widowed, she added with casual ease, like it was just another passport stamp. She had that dry, elegant confidence some women carry like fine perfume. Not loud, just there. We started walking together. Nothing far. Quiet morning strolls through the less photographed parts of the city. I liked the way she noticed things, not the landmarks, but the stories hiding in corners. A broken shutter painted lilac. A stray dog asleep beside a crumbling statue. She wasn't collecting moments for likes. She just saw them. One afternoon, we lunched under a leafy pergola, sipping chilled white wine. She talked about her old students, especially the troublemakers she'd secretly adored. I told her about my garden back home. The tomatoes never listened, no matter how kindly I spoke to them. "And your family?" she asked. I hesitated. "They're fine. Just thought I was too old to travel." Her brow lifted. "They said that to you?" I nodded. She didn't huff or gasp, just took another sip of wine. "Well, you're here." So, they were wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tangled in memories. The birthday cakes I baked but never got to sit and enjoy. The holidays I paid for but was never invited to join. How many times had I told myself they're just busy or I'm needed here? But I wasn't. Not really. Not beyond the practical tasks, the feeding, the tidying, the endless, invisible support. The next morning, Celia knocked on my door. She held a folded map under one arm and had a glimmer in her eye. "Bolano," she said. "It's close. I've always wanted to see the 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. "Me?" I asked, caught off guard. She shrugged. "Why not?" We booked train tickets that afternoon. Two women, both well past 70, buying one-way seats like university girls chasing the next summer breeze. We laughed over dinner, though part of me still felt tight like an old muscle and used to moving freely. That evening, I received a message from my daughter-in-law. The first in weeks. "Did you check the garden? The sprinkler system's acting up again. No, how are you? No, where are you? Just instructions." As if I were still watching their house. I didn't answer. Instead, I packed, folded the navy dress carefully, wrapped my pearls in tissue, slid my shoes into a plastic bag, old habits from practical years. I moved slowly, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I was savoring it. In the corner of the room sat a simple glass vase, holding fresh daisies, a gift from Celia. "Because you look like someone who appreciates flowers without needing a reason," she'd said. She wasn't wrong. That night, I turned the phone off and tucked it into the drawer. No pings. No updates. No silent hope of being included. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone waiting. I felt like someone going one step at a time. Our train to Bolano departed just after 8. We sat together in a nearly empty car, our bags stowed overhead, a brown paper bag of almond pastries resting between us. Celia was deep into a French mystery novel. I watched the hills drift past, golden fields, scattered villas, vineyards stretching in perfect rows. It all looked like a painting my husband once picked up at a market. Cheap frame, but something inside it stirred him. "It looks like somewhere I'll never get to see," he had said. I never thought I would either. We didn't talk much. That was the comfort of Celia. She never pushed for conversation. She didn't rush to fill the silence. When the train curved gently through the hills, she looked up and handed me the last pastry without a word. I smiled and took it. That was enough. Bolano welcomed us with humid air and tight cobbled lanes. The guest house we'd booked had the kind of faded elegance that only time could shape. The elevator creaked like it had stories, and the keys were brass with cracked leather fobs. Our room overlooked a maze of terracotta rooftops and clotheslines swaying between shuttered windows. "I want to see Valencia," Celia said, dropping her bag onto the bed. "And maybe buy something ridiculous I'll never wear." We did both. The Valencia gallery was swarming with people, but it didn't matter. Standing before the Sea Maiden, something shifted inside me. It wasn't awe exactly. It was something quieter, recognition. That rare feeling that beauty doesn't have to shout. It can just be still, unrelenting, and move you anyway. My throat tightened. We wandered through side streets after that. At one cafe, the waiter flirted with Celia, and she flirted right back. She had a way of doing that, owning her age without apologizing for it. I envied that freedom. That evening, we ate at a small trattoria tucked away on the western edge of the river. Pasta with sage and butter. Red wine in squat glasses. Laughter that didn't feel borrowed. "You're different now," Celia said, her tone light but precise. "How so?" "You sit taller. Less folded." I didn't know how to respond. So I nodded. Later, back in the room, I picked up my phone out of habit. 24 missed calls. 14 from my daughter-in-law. The rest from my son. I didn't play the voicemails. Just skimmed the messages. "Where are you? Are you okay? Did something happen?" Then a voice memo. My son's voice, clipped and tired. "Mom, please call us. The kids are upset. We thought you'd be home." I stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar wave, guilt, anger, sadness. But what I felt was distance. Not cruelty, just space. Enough to breathe. The next morning, Celia slept in. I went out on my own, wandering without a destination. Followed narrow lanes uphill. Found a little shop with linen skirts and handcrafted earrings. I bought neither, but tried on both. Later, we took a local bus to Villa Dova, high above the city. We sat beneath trees, looking down on the rooftops below. This, I said, not meaning the view exactly. This was missing. Celia nodded, like she understood perfectly. When we returned, another message awaited me. My son again. "Mom, did you cancel our vacation on purpose? We got to the airport and never mind. Please call. We're worried." I turned the phone off. That evening, as we strolled back to the hotel, Celia asked so. "Where next?" I paused. "𝒔𝒊𝒅," I said. "Always wanted to hear a father singer live." She grinned. "Let's go then." 𝒔𝒊𝒅 embraced us like an old friend, warm, slightly disheveled, humming with songs you didn't need to translate to understand. The sidewalks sparkled faintly from the previous night's rain. Even the breeze felt rebellious, like the whole city had decided not to apologize for being what it was. We stayed in a tiled guest house with blue shutters. Our room had a tiny iron balcony overlooking a small plaza where children kicked a ball between benches older than any of us. I stood there a long time that first night, watching the shadows stretch across the rooftops. Below, the voices of strangers drifted up, rapid Portuguese that flowed like wind through trees. Celia wasn't feeling well that day. Nothing alarming. A mild fever, aching joints. "It's nothing," she insisted. I've felt worse. Go out. Explore. But I didn't. Instead, I brewed her tea. Sat by her bed. Read aloud from a novel we'd picked up in Bolano. It was a quiet afternoon, slow and still. She drifted off mid-paragraph, her breathing calm, her features softened in sleep. It reminded me of Raymond, those quiet hours in the hospital. The tiny rituals of care. Things no one writes poetry about, but which hold the world together. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent my life taking care of others, children, grandchildren, my husband, even the dog. But this, sitting beside Celia, cooling her forehead, making tea not out of duty, but because I chose to, this felt different. It felt like freedom. That night, I cooked for us. Nothing elaborate, just eggs, crusty bread, and tomatoes from a street vendor who smiled like we were long-lost friends. We ate on the balcony, wrapped in shawls, listening to the quiet stirrings of the city. Celia looked better, color back in her cheeks, voice no longer strained. "Thank you," she said when the plates were cleared. "For the eggs. For not leaving." I didn't know what to say, so I nodded and took another sip of tea. The next morning, I woke to the sound of trova, that old, aching music that feels like it comes from somewhere deeper than sorrow. A man was playing in the square below. His voice cracked now and then, but it didn't matter. The melody found me anyway. I stood barefoot at the balcony, arms crossed against the morning chill, letting the music settle into my bones. By the time Celia was dressed and ready, the city had fully stirred. We walked slowly, her still recovering, me lost in thought. We passed an old chapel with its doors flung open. Incense spilled out onto the street like smoke from a memory. I didn't go in. I just stood there, watching a woman light a candle, kneel, and press her palms together like she was holding something breakable. Back at the guest house, I turned on my phone. 5 new messages. All from my daughter-in-law. This isn't funny, Vera. We're not sure what to tell the kids. Then one from my son. You've made your point. Had I? I wasn't even sure what point they thought I was making. I hadn't spoken a single word since they left me behind. Celia saw the expression on my face as I read the messages. She didn't ask. She simply poured tea and handed me a cup. That evening, we found a trova bar hidden between 2 narrow alleys where laundry danced in the wind. There was no menu, no cameras, no tourists, just locals with glasses raised, and one woman singing like her voice had been weathered by storms. She sang about longing, about being forgotten, about standing back up. She wasn't singing for me, but I understood every word. The letter came in the night, slipped under our door. No envelope, no postage, just my name scrawled in rushed handwriting I recognized instantly. It was from my son. I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter unopened on my lap, while Celia adjusted her scarf in the mirror. She didn't mention it. She didn't have to. She'd seen it, the way you see a bruise form on someone else's skin. Obvious, but not yours to press on. I unfolded the letter carefully. It wasn't long. 3 short paragraphs, written in the same tone he used when filling out tax forms. Mom, we don't understand what you're doing. The kids are confused. Mira cried. We thought you were just upset, but this feels like something else. If you're trying to punish us, you've made your point. Please come home. Let's talk. Eli, that was it. No apology. No recognition that they'd excluded me from a trip they organized with effortless precision and no room for me. Just concern over how it looked, as if my absence had embarrassed them more than their dismissal had hurt me. I folded the letter again and placed it in the drawer by the bed. Celia turned around, raising an eyebrow. So, are we having breakfast or just mourning the weak penmanship of disappointing sons? I laughed. It caught me off guard. We ate in the courtyard. Sunlight filtered through the hanging vines. The smell of sweet bread and strong coffee softened the air. Celia chatted about tram routes and how she wanted to visit the Tile Museum. I nodded, though my mind still lingered on the letter and the silence that had surrounded my absence from their lives. The truth was, I hadn't left to punish anyone. I'd left because I was tired of asking for a seat at a table that kept shrinking each year. Birthdays had become group texts. Holidays, too busy. And now, even family vacations, the happy ones, came with the quiet understanding that I was no longer part of the picture. I hadn't stopped being a mother. Or a grandmother. They had just stopped seeing me. Later that afternoon, I sat alone on a low stone wall by the river. Boats glided lazily past. Pigeons squabbled for crumbs at my feet. My hands rested quietly in my lap, still as the current. I thought of Mira, 16, all bright eyes and eyeliner. The last time we spoke, she'd asked me how to fry an egg. She'd called me the egg whisperer. She didn't know about the tickets. She didn't know I'd canceled the trip. Maybe she thought they forgot to invite me. Or assumed I'd said no. I opened my phone and typed out a message. Sweetheart, I'm okay. Just traveling. Not angry, not hiding, just needed a little sky. Don't worry. Love you. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. About half an hour later, Celia found me still sitting there, holding 2 small paper bags. 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅, she said. You can't leave 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅 without trying these. We ate in silence, watching shadows stretch across the cobblestones. That evening, as we returned to the guest house, the manager approached us, looking puzzled. Mrs. Vera, he said, your daughter-in-law called. She asked me to tell you. She's worried. The children miss you. I nodded. Thank you. The manager hesitated. Would you like to call her back? No, he looked uncertain, but didn't press. Then he walked away. That night, I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that arrives not when you're tired, but when you finally stopped waiting to be needed and started choosing to feel whole. In the morning, Celia showed me 2 train timetables, one for �𝒂𝒊𝒅, one for Santino. Your pick, she said. Outside, the sky was a brilliant blue. The street below smelled of roasted chestnuts and city life, bus breaks, coffee, something sweet baking nearby. Life in its unfiltered form. Santino, I said. Let's see what else they think I'm too old for. Santino was fire in the bones, not just from the heat, though it clung to us like a second skin, but from the rhythm of it all. The pulse in the alleyways, the voices echoing across stone walls, the unapologetic presence of a place that never asked permission to exist. We arrived just before sunset. Our hotel was tucked between a leather shop and a bakery that smelled like sugar and smoke. The room was small but charming, with a little balcony overlooking a courtyard lined with orange trees. From somewhere nearby, a flamenco guitar played softly, its sound floating in the dusk air. Celia dropped her bag on the bed and looked around. This place demands earrings, she declared. She vanished into the bathroom and emerged minutes later with silver hoops that caught the light when she turned her head. I had none to match, but I pinned back my hair and reached for the lipstick I'd first found at the bottom of my bag back in Castro Pena. It was nearly gone now, and for the first time in years, I thought about buying another. That evening, we wandered aimlessly. The streets pulsed with life, not the hurried noise of tourists, but the unhurried breath of a city alive after dark. We followed the sound of clapping until we stumbled into a courtyard restaurant where a small group performed flamenco. Not for tips, not for cameras, for each other. One woman danced, her face solemn and strong. She didn't smile. She didn't pose. She simply moved, rooted entirely in the moment, without apology or performance. I couldn't look away. Celia leaned toward me. She's older than we are. I studied her again. Mid-70s at least. Her feet struck the ground with the certainty of someone who remembered who she was. The crowd clapped. I didn't. I just watched, my heart caught between admiration and ache. The next morning, we visited the Alcázar. The palace was carved in color, its walls telling stories in tile and arch. As we wandered its shaded gardens, I thought of the stories locked inside me. Years of quiet endurance, of tucking away grief to make room for responsibility. I walked those gardens as though I belonged. No one called me dear. No one offered me their arm. And for once, I didn't feel like I needed it. That afternoon, we sat under a striped canopy at a quiet cafe. Celia sipped lemonade and scrolled through headlines. I watched people. That's when I saw them, a family of 4. 2 adults, 2 teens. The father looked worn. The mother walked just ahead, staring into her phone. The daughter had headphones in. The boy carried a small plastic bag. It should have meant nothing. But the mother's haircut, sharp blonde, too familiar, caught me off guard. My breath caught. Of course, it wasn't her. But for a moment, I saw my daughter-in-law's silhouette in that woman's frame. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from something quieter. Something unnamed. It passed. Back at the hotel, a message waited on my phone. From Mira. Grandma, where are you now? The photo from 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅 was amazing. I showed it to my art teacher. She said you have a really good eye. Can I call you soon? I smiled, then frowned. I hadn't sent her a photo. Celia, I said slowly. Did you? Of course. I opened my gallery. There it was, me on the balcony in �𝒂𝒊𝒅, one arm resting on the rail, eyes toward the street. I didn't remember standing like that. Didn't remember being still enough to be noticed. But there I was, not performing, not apologizing, just existing. I typed a reply, Santino now. It's hot and stubborn and full of beautiful noise. I'll call you tomorrow. You'd love it here. That night, I lay in bed and thought of all the places I never went because someone had to stay behind. All the you go ahead, I'll be fine moments, even when I wasn't. The trips I helped pay for but wasn't invited on. The weddings I helped plan but watched from the sidelines. But now here I was, in Santino, wearing a soft cotton nightgown I bought from a street vendor who called me Señora Valente, the brave lady. I closed my eyes and let the sound of a distant radio drift in through the open window. Tomorrow I'd dance. Not for anyone. Just to remember that I could. It started with a call I didn't answer. Then another. Then 3 more. By mid-morning, my phone lit up again. Same name. Same number. Same silence on my end. By then, there had been 26 calls in 2 days. One voicemail after another. I hadn't listened to a single one. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just done asking to be heard. Celia was already dressed when I stepped out of the bathroom. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and a linen dress that floated behind her like a sail in soft wind. There's a market down by the river, Celia said, and I feel like haggling. We walked slowly, the soles of my sandals scraping gently against weathered cobblestones. The sun pressed against the back of my neck like a mischievous child tapping for attention. The market was alive, unpolished, unscripted, real. Vendors shouted prices, women laughed freely, children darted through stalls with sticky hands and wide eyes. Something shifted in my chest, a thread pulled loose from a knot I hadn't even known was there. I bought a scarf. Bright yellow, the color of marigolds. It wasn't something I'd normally wear, but it caught the light as if it had always belonged in my life. While Celia negotiated over a handmade basket, I sat under a faded striped umbrella with a cold citrus drink and checked my phone. I'm not sure why I have it, maybe. Or hope. There was a voice memo. Not from Eli this time, from Mira. Her voice was soft, careful. Grandma, I don't know if you'll hear this, but I just wanted to say I miss you. Mom and Dad are kind of freaking out. They think you're trying to prove something. But I don't think so. I think you just got tired of being left behind. I would have been too. Anyway, I hope you're safe. You look happy in that photo. I've never seen you look like that. Just call me, okay? Even if it's just for a minute. I listened to it twice. Then a third time. That last line, even if it's just for a minute, cracked something open inside me. I went back to the hotel while Celia went in search of olives. I sat on the edge of the bed with the yellow scarf in my lap, then picked up the phone and dialed. Mira answered on a second ring. Grandma? Her voice trembled. In the background, I heard a kettle whistle, footsteps on tile. I'm here, sweetheart. Oh my God, wait. The phone shifted. A door closed. Then silence. I was starting to think you'd gone completely rogue, she said, her voice shaking just slightly. Not rogue, I said. Just found something I didn't realize I'd lost. What? Myself. She paused. I get it, she said quietly. I think I get it more than Mom and Dad do. I believed her. We talked for 15 minutes. About school. Her sketchbook. A boy she liked who didn't like her back. Ordinary things. Precious things. Then she asked, gently, are you coming home soon? I don't know yet, I told her honestly. Can I see you when you do? Of course, baby. We hung up. I felt lighter, not because anything had been resolved, but because something honest had passed between us. And truth, real truth, always clears the air. Celia returned with a proud grin and a paper bag full of green olives. Victory, she declared. We ate them on the balcony. The sunset stained the sky crimson and gold. I think they're starting to understand, I said eventually. Who? My family. She chewed thoughtfully, then nodded. About time. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from worry, something deeper. A shift I couldn't name. A new kind of weight. Not heavy, just real. Like finding the floor beneath your feet after drifting for too long. In the morning, I tied the yellow scarf around my neck. For no reason. Just because I could. 𝒔𝒊𝒅 had been soft and aching. 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅, graceful and quiet. But 𝒔𝒊𝒅, it gave me heat and thunder. It shook loose a part of me I hadn't realized was still tangled in apology. Now, scarf in place and ticket in hand, we boarded the train to Miranda. Celia was humming. She never hummed in the mornings. What's the occasion? I asked. She raised an eyebrow. We're going to see the 𝒔𝒊𝒅. I hum for architecture. I smiled, folded my hands in my lap, and watched the countryside pass by in a blur of green and stone. Miranda was quieter than I expected. Not silent, just respectful, like a city that knew what it held and didn't need to prove anything. The streets were narrow, like whispered conversations passed between buildings. The air carried the scent of stone and oranges. We checked into a modest inn managed by a man who looked like someone's exhausted uncle. Our room overlooked rooftops and laundry lines. The kind of view that tells the truth. Unpolished. Unfiltered. That evening, while Celia napped, I sat alone on the terrace and scrolled through my messages. Not to see what they said, but to prove to myself that I could read them without responding. It's a strange kind of freedom, choosing silence. But one message stopped me. It was from Eli. Just one line. Mom, did we lose you? No anger. No blame. Just a note. A question. Maybe even recognition. I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up the notebook I'd bought in 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. I hadn't written a single word in it until now. Things I've never said out loud. I wasn't always tired. I just got tired of not being seen. Every time you called me old-fashioned, I swallowed a sentence I should have said. I still remember the look on your face when you were 5 and handed me a rock from the yard and called it precious. That was the last time you gave me something just because. I miss being called by my name. I didn't cry. I just kept writing. In the morning, we climbed to the 𝒔𝒊𝒅. It wasn't easy. The incline was steep and my knees complained with every step. But I kept going, not to prove anything, just to see it for myself. And there it was. Arches laced with geometry. Fountains whispering stories. Stone carved so delicately it felt like lace held in place by time. I wondered how many hands had shaped it, how many people had stood exactly where I now stood and thought, so this is what beauty looks like when no one rushes it. Celia took a photo of me sitting on a bench, half in shadow, half in sun. You look like someone who's remembered something important, she said. I have, I answered. I remembered that I was never just the one who stayed behind. That night, back at the inn, I found a voice message waiting. From Mira. Her voice was tight, uncertain. Grandma, I think Dad is starting to realize something's really changed. He asked if I'd heard from you. I said yes. He looked scared, like he knows flowers won't fix it this time, like he knows he can't just pretend none of this happened. I told him you're not angry, you're just finished. I hope that was okay. It wasn't okay. It was perfect. I sent her the photos Celia had taken earlier. Me, standing at the top of the hill, hands on my hips, the 𝒔𝒊𝒅 behind me, my face calm and unbothered. No caption, just the image. She replied with a single heart. which was exactly enough. I turned off my phone, lay back on the bed, and watched the ceiling fan turn slowly above me. Tomorrow, we'd head to the coast. Celia had said she wanted to see the ocean again. I told her yes, not because I needed the view, but because I finally had space in my life to want something again. We took the early bus to Ladera. Celia claimed the sea air helped her lungs and improved her posture. I think she just liked how the wind messed up her hair and made her feel untamable. The ride was long, the seat stiff, but I didn't mind. I watched the landscape unravel, olive groves giving way to dry scrubland, then pale salt marshes, until the coastline appeared. Wide, blue, and breathing. We found a guest house near the old marina. The room smelled of salt and sun-aged wood. From the balcony, we could see fishing boats pulling into the harbor at dusk, nets trailing behind them like tired promises. I stood there a long time, one hand on the iron railing, the breeze tugging gently at my sleeve. That evening, we walked the beach. It was quieter than I expected. The waves weren't theatrical, just steady, unbothered. Celia picked up a piece of sea glass and slipped it into her pocket. I took off my shoes and stepped into the water, letting the cold reach my ankles. Not flinching, just feeling. There was a couple nearby, older than us, holding hands the way teenagers do. They didn't talk, just walked side by side, fingers locked like a vow too old to need repeating. I sat on a low rock and watched the sun fall into the horizon. Somewhere behind me, Celia hummed softly, the same tune from our train ride into Miranda. Her melody drifted into the air, mingling with the cries of gulls overhead. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't move, not at first. But eventually, I pulled it out. Eli again. Please, just let us hear your voice. I stared at the screen, then opened the voice memo app. I didn't plan it, didn't rehearse. I just pressed record and spoke. Eli, I'm not angry, but I am different. I spent most of my life waiting to be invited, to be needed, to be noticed. And sometimes I was. But mostly, I was the backdrop to your lives. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. I love you. I always will. But I'm not returning to the role you quietly assigned me, the backup plan, the babysitter, the emergency contact. If you want me in your life, it'll have to be as a person. A full one. I hope you understand. Good night. I hit send. The ocean murmured something ancient and private against the shore. I couldn't translate it, but I understood its rhythm. Back at the guest house, Celia was reading under the soft glow of a bedside lamp. She looked up. You sent it. I nodded. She closed her book. How do you feel? Like I finally said something I'd been swallowing for 20 years. She smiled. About damn time. That night, I dreamed of a hallway. Endless. Every few feet, a door. All closed. I walked barefoot, my fingertips brushing over each knob. One by one, the doors clicked open behind me. I didn't look back. In the morning, there was no reply from Eli. But there was another message from Mira. A photo. She'd drawn something me on the beach. Scarf at my neck, wind-tossed hair, feet bare in the surf. The caption read, "She looks like she remembered who she was." I stared at it for a long time, then turned to Celia. Let's go dancing tonight. She blinked. Dancing? Yes. She smirked. Dearnies even allow that? I grinned. They'll learn. The bar wasn't meant for us. Not really. It pulsed with youth, fast music, dim lights, the sharp scent of perfume, sweat, and novelty. A converted warehouse near the docks, everything reclaimed, everything loud. But we went anyway. Celia wore her silver hoops again, her hair down, lipstick perfect. I wore the yellow scarf, not around my neck anymore. This time, I tied it into my hair like a ribbon I'd earned. My dress was simple, soft cotton, faded but clean. It didn't demand attention. It didn't have to. We didn't look like we belonged in that place. But then again, belonging had never done me much good. We found a table near the back of the venue. The music wasn't flamenco. It was something newer, syncopated, unexpected. A beat that slipped under your skin and moved your foot before you realized. The dance floor pulsed with bodies, young couples, sunburnt tourists, a few locals who danced like the rhythm owed them rent. Celia sipped something pink and fizzy, tapping one heel in time with the bass. I watched the dancers. How they moved without self-consciousness. How they laughed when they missed the beat. How no one waited for permission. A man in his 60s, with a crooked mustache and shoes worn nearly through, spun a woman our age. They both grinned like fools. Something shifted in me. "I'm going," I said. Celia looked up. "Where?" "There," I nodded to the floor. She blinked. "Alone?" "Yes." I stood, tightened the scarf in my hair, and walked onto the floor. I didn't wait for a partner. I didn't wait for a cue. I just moved. At first, it felt strange. Like I was borrowing someone else's body, my limbs unfamiliar, my breath shallow. But then the beat pulled me forward, and the years fell off like dust from a forgotten coat. I danced. Not gracefully, not skillfully, but fully. A younger man brushed past, smiled, not mockingly, but warmly, and offered his hand. I took it for a single spin, laughed, then let go. I didn't need him to carry the rhythm. I had my own. Celia joined me after a while. We danced like old classmates at a reunion, clumsy, breathless, delighted. We stayed for 2 hours, then 3. When we finally staggered back to the guest house, barefoot and flushed, we collapsed on the bed like teenagers sneaking in past curfew. "That was irresponsible," Celia panted. "I know. I loved it. I know." We lay in silence, catching our breath. My knees ached. My back would complain tomorrow. But my chest felt wide open. Before I fell asleep, I checked my phone. No reply from Eli. But there was a new message from Mira. "Dad doesn't know how to respond. He keeps rereading your message. He printed it. It's sitting on the kitchen table. He hasn't touched it all day. Mom thinks you've lost your mind. I told her maybe you finally found it. I miss you. I'm proud of you." I don't think I've ever said that before, but I am. I read her words twice. Then again. They weren't loud. They were true. I typed back, "I miss you too. Tell your father he doesn't have to answer yet. Some truths take time to land." She replied with a single emoji, a tiny anchor. It made me laugh. I set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy, deliberate circles. The air moved gently, like a hand smoothing a page. I thought of the dance floor. That moment I let go. Of how I hadn't done anything extraordinary, hadn't climbed a mountain or learned a new language or fallen in love, but I'd reclaimed something. My joy. And at 72, that felt radical enough. I fell asleep with aching feet, tired legs, and a heart that finally belonged to me again. We left Ladera at dawn. Celia slept most of the ride, her head resting against the window, arms crossed like a woman who'd taken too many trains to bother making herself comfortable. I didn't sleep. I watched the light shift across open fields. I watched towns pass, names I wouldn't remember, places I wouldn't return to. I wasn't restless. I was ready. Marvella was our final stop. We didn't say it aloud, but we both knew. We'd seen enough cities to recognize when a journey begins to settle, when momentum softens into stillness. We arrived just past noon and took a taxi to a narrow street near hotels. The hotel was modest, the room plain, but the bed was soft, and the windows opened wide to a warm breeze. We unpacked in silence. Later, we walked. Not far, just enough to feel the city beneath our soles. I remembered Mira once saying, Marvella feels like someone tried to paint using buildings. She wasn't wrong. The architecture peeked around corners like mischief in stone. Bold colors. Impossible curves. A city that seemed to laugh at straight lines. I liked it more than I expected to. We had dinner at a cafe tucked between two dusty bookstores. I ordered sea bass. Celia chose soup. Neither of us finished our wine. The conversation was light weather, shoes, train times. But underneath it, there was a quiet awareness. A thread of something unsaid, something ending. That night, back in our room, I sat on the balcony with a shawl over my shoulders and my notebook in my lap. The list had grown. Things I've never said out loud. Page 3. I thought if I gave enough, they'd keep me close. But love bought by sacrifice is always the kind that's least remembered. I didn't mind getting older. I minded being dismissed. It took me 50 years to realize silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's just fear dressed in patience. I don't regret the mother I was. I regret who I disappeared to become her. I closed the notebook. My phone buzzed, not Eli, not Mira. It was my daughter-in-law. Lena. The message was longer than usual. Vera, we've all been talking. Eli doesn't know how to reach you anymore. He's afraid anything he says will come out wrong. I told him sometimes listening matters more. We didn't mean to leave you out. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's the truth. We planned the trip thinking it would be easier for the kids. We told ourselves you'd be more comfortable at home. That was a lie. We were afraid of your age. Not because of your limits, but because it reminded us of our own. We're sorry. I'm sorry. If you ever decide to come home, we'd like to start over. No expectations. Just you. As you are. I didn't cry, but I sat very still for a long time. It wasn't an apology that erased anything. It was simply a beginning. The next morning, Celia found me folding clothes into my suitcase. She raised an eyebrow. Home. Eventually. She nodded. You sure? Yes. She sipped her tea. Well, about time you threw the last punch. I laughed. It wasn't a punch. More like a door opened. Celia left 2 days later. We hugged at the station. Neither of us said goodbye. Just soon. That night, alone in the room, I ordered one last glass of wine from the bar downstairs and sat by the window. My yellow scarf lay on the table. My shoes rested near the door. I didn't feel finished. But I felt full. Tomorrow, I'd buy a ticket. Not back to the house they told me to watch, but to the life I finally chose to return to on my terms. The airport didn't feel like a goodbye, more like a pause. I wasn't leaving something behind. I was bringing something back. Myself, maybe. Or what was left of her after decades of waiting in silence. The flight was quiet. I didn't watch a movie. I didn't read. I just let the soft engine hum cradle my thoughts, watching the land fall away into clouds, flattening, vanishing. When I landed, no one waited. I hadn't expected them to. The air here was thicker. The sky more muted. It smelled like damp soil and overwatered hedges, a familiar kind of forgotten. I took a cab. The driver was young, too talkative. I gave short answers, watching the streets slip past like half-remembered dreams. The bakery I used to take Mira to. The park where Eli once broke his arm falling from the jungle bars. The pharmacy where Lena and I once stood side by side, buying cough syrup and a pregnancy test. They weren't painful memories. They were just far away now, like someone else's handwriting in an old book. My house looked exactly as I'd left it. Donna had watered the plants. The porch was swept clean. The key turned easily in the lock. Inside, everything held its breath. I moved from room to room, brushing my fingers against the surfaces. The couch armrest, the chipped ceramic bowl on the table, the photo of Raymond on the mantel. Nothing had moved. But everything had changed. I didn't unpack. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table with the window open. Let the silence stretch. My phone buzzed. A message from Mira. Are you home? I typed back, yes. 10 minutes later, can I come by? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Doors open. She arrived in 20. No speech. No pretense. Just a long, quiet hug that said everything. She sat across from me, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. Her face looked older, not in years, but in awareness. I liked your list, she said. I blinked. My list? She smiled. You left your notebook open in one of the photos. I read it. Well, part of it. I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. I've been making one too, she added, reaching into her bag. You inspired me. She handed over a small spiral notebook. The first page read, Things I refuse to inherit quietly, the belief that women outgrow desire, the idea that aging equals decline, the habit of saying I'm fine when I'm not, the silence that follows being told you're too much. The shame passed down like antique furniture. I read every line. Then I looked up at her, this girl, this woman, who'd watched me vanish and come back. You're going to be all right, I said. She nodded. Because you were. We talked for hours. About art school. Her boyfriend. The way her mother still talked too loud when nervous. At one point, I reached for her hand. You know, I said, your father still hasn't called. She looked down. He's scared. Of me? No. Of what you've become. Of what he never let himself see before. I didn't respond. The doorbell rang. Mira looked up. That's them. I didn't move. I'll get it, she said gently. I heard the door open. Muffled voices. Then quiet. Then Eli. He stepped into the kitchen like it was sacred ground. His face was tired. Older. He looked at me like someone waiting for permission to speak. I wanted to come alone, he said. But Lena insisted. She appeared behind him. Hands clasped. No makeup. No armor. Just real. We don't know how to start, she said softly. I stood. You already did, I replied. You showed up. Eli stepped forward. I didn't want to lose you. You didn't, I said. You just stopped seeing me. He nodded. I'm sorry. Not grand. Not poetic. Just honest. It was enough. I made tea, I said. There's still some in the pot. They sat not as owners of the space, not as people asking for forgiveness like it was a favor, but as people who'd finally realized the seat at the table wasn't theirs by default. It had to be earned. They didn't stay long, an hour, maybe less. Just enough time for awkward sips, too many pauses, and the quiet work of shaping something new between us. I didn't rush it. I didn't smooth over the edges. I let them sit in the quiet I'd lived in for years. Let them feel it. Lena spoke more than Eli. She always had. But this time, there was less certainty in her voice. More listening between her words. She asked about the trip, the cities, the food, the people. I gave her pieces. Not the whole. She hadn't earned that. Not yet. When they left, Eli lingered at the door. Can I? He hesitated. Would you like to come to dinner sometime? Just us. You and me. No crowd. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. He looked relieved anyway. After they were gone, the house was quiet again, but not brittle like before. Not the kind of silence that breaks if you breathe too loud. This was a softer hush. A pause before a new line begins. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket across my lap, notebook open again. I hadn't added to it in 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. I think part of me knew I'd need space for this. Things I know now, I wrote at the top of a new page. People don't notice your silence until it costs them something. Leaving isn't the same as running away. You can still start over at 72. Some doors don't need to be slammed, just closed. Softly but firmly. Your voice isn't gone. It's waiting for you to stop asking for permission. I paused, tapped the pen to the paper, and added, forgiveness isn't for them. It's for your own breath. I closed the notebook and placed it beside me, breathing in the scent of night jasmine. Mira came by the next afternoon. No warning, no reason. She walked in, kicked off her shoes, and flopped onto the couch like she used to when she was little. I made a decision, she said. I'm applying to the program in 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. I looked at her. Her eyes were nervous, but steady. I know it's far, she said, and Mom's already freaking out. But I need to do this. I need to go. I didn't flinch. You should, I said. She blinked. Really? Don't wait for permission, I said. You'll miss your life. Her mouth curled into a slow, wide smile. I knew you'd understand. She stayed for hours. We made soup, talked about books. She asked about Celia and laughed when I said we danced until our legs gave out. You're kind of a legend, she teased. No, I said. I'm just finally myself. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a drawing of the beach in Ladera, but now there was a figure standing at the edge of the sea. Me, arms wide, head tilted toward the wind. At the bottom, she'd written, she didn't come back the same, and that was the point. I looked up. She shrugged. I'm going to get it framed. After she left, I placed the drawing beside Raymond's photo on the mantel. He would have understood. The next morning, I received a letter. Real paper. Blue ink. Eli's handwriting. Mom, thank you. For the tea. For letting us sit in the silence. I see it now. I don't expect to be forgiven. But I'd like to try. Not to erase anything. Just to build something better, if you're willing. No declarations. No promises. Just a man learning to speak differently to the woman who raised him. I folded the letter. I didn't reply. Not yet. Some silences aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be honored. I didn't go to dinner right away. I let the invitation sit. Days passed. Then a week. I watered my own plants. Cooked my own meals. Walked in the early mornings. Not to punish anyone. Not to make them worry. But to feel the shape of my life without them in it. And it was a good shape. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. Dignified. Mine. Celia sent a postcard from 𝒔𝒂𝒊𝒅. They still think I'm a widow with a secret inheritance, she wrote in messy ink. Let them. On the back, she'd sketched 2 women dancing in a bar. One wore a yellow scarf, arms lifted to the sky. I laughed when I saw it, framed it, placed it beside the kitchen window. Then, one morning, I called Eli. Sunday, I said. 5 o'clock. I'll bring dessert. He sounded surprised, grateful, careful, as he should. When I arrived at their house, Lena opened the door. She didn't smile too quickly, didn't rush to hug me. She simply stepped aside and said, "Come in." I walked through the rooms like a guest, not like someone who'd once been there every week. The walls had new art. The furniture was rearranged. Even the air felt different. I wasn't hurt. They had kept living. So had I. Mira was already at the table. She stood and kissed my cheek. I made the salad, she whispered, like we were sharing a secret. Don't tell Mom if it's bad. I smiled and took my seat. Dinner was fine, civil, a little stilted. Eli asked questions. Lena offered seconds. Mira cracked jokes. I answered simply. I listened more than I spoke. I watched Eli's eyes, how they flicked toward me like he was checking for fractures in something that had once seemed indestructible. Toward the end, he cleared his throat. I read your notebook. I looked at him. What notebook? The one from the photo. The one on the counter. Mira let me read some of it. I raised an eyebrow. She showed you. She said it was important. Anne, I saw what you weren't saying. That sounded like her. He hesitated. It hurt. Good, I said. He blinked. Good, I repeated. Because it means you finally heard me. He nodded slowly. I did. Lena cleared her throat. We've talked about a lot of things. And we want to do better. I'm not here for promises, I said. I'm here to see if you're learning. They both nodded. I brought out dessert. Lemon tart. Not too sweet, just enough bite to wake the mouth. We ate in silence for a while. Then Mira said, I want to read something. She pulled a folded page from her jacket pocket. Her voice trembled as she began. Things I want to remember. My grandma taught me that disappearing quietly is a slow kind of death. That staying soft is not the same as staying silent. That women don't owe their energy to the comfort of others. That loving someone doesn't mean becoming small for them. That it's okay to outgrow your place at the table and ask for a new one. I blinked hard. No one spoke for a long time. Eventually, Lena stood and began clearing dishes. Eli helped without needing to be asked. Mira poured more tea. And I sat back, hands resting in my lap, watching the quiet settle over us, not the tense kind, but the kind you share when people are finally learning how to hold each other honestly. When I left, Eli walked me to the door. He paused. I know it'll take time. I have time, I said. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a thin envelope, and handed it to him. What's this? A copy of the tickets, I said. The ones I canceled. He stared at it. I kept them. Not out of spite, out of truth. So we don't forget how easy it was to erase me. He didn't open the envelope, just nodded and slid it into his coat pocket. We didn't hug, but we stood close, like people who might one day understand each other without needing to explain every bruise. At home, I undressed slowly, took off my earrings, folded the scarf. I stood in front of the mirror and studied my reflection. Older, yes, but not tired. Wiser, but not hard. There were lines now that hadn't been there before the trip. But they weren't cracks. They were paths, etched reminders of the journey I'd taken back to myself. Before bed, I opened my notebook and wrote one final page. Things I no longer apologize for, wanting space, wanting more, saying no, leaving quietly, coming back louder, and at the bottom, in small script, I was never too old. I was just never asked if I still dreamed. Now I don't wait to be asked. I go. Sweetheart, don't forget to subscribe and leave me a little note in the comments. I love hearing from you.